Members of the jury, have you arrived at a verdict? Okay. Will the deputy please retrieve the verdict forms and provide it to me for review? Would Ms. Potter please rise? I'm now going to read your verdicts as it will appear in the permanent court records of Hennepin County. In the matter of State of Minnesota versus Kimberly Potter, court file number 27 CR 217490, we, the jury, on the charge of manslaughter in the first degree while committing a misdemeanor on or about April 11, 2021, in Hennepin County, State of Minnesota, find the defendant guilty. And the verdict was agreed to at the hour of 11:40 a.m. and signed by the jury person on 12/23/21. The verdict on count 2 is we, the jury, on the charge of manslaughter in the second degree, culpable negligence on or about April 11, 2021, in Hennepin County, State of Minnesota, find the defendant guilty. And that verdict was agreed to at 10:30 a.m. on 12/21/21. Members of the jury, is this your true and correct verdict? So say you one, and so say you all.
Yes.
Okay, you may be seated. All right, I am now going to poll the jury. Juror number 2, is this your true and correct verdict?
It is.
Juror number 6, is this your true and correct verdict?
Yes, it is.
Juror number 7, is this your true and correct verdict?
Yes, it is.
Juror number 13, is this your true and correct verdict? Oh, it's juror 11. And juror 17, is this your true and correct verdict?
Yes.
Juror number 19, is this your true and correct verdict?
Yes.
Juror number 21, is this your true and correct verdict?
Yes.
Juror number 22, is this your true and correct verdict?
Yes.
Juror number 26, is this your true and correct verdict?
Yes.
Juror number 40, is this your true and correct verdict?
Yes.
Juror number 48, is this your true and correct verdict?
Yes.
And juror number 55, is this your true and correct verdict?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Members of the jury, when you first came into the courtroom, I told you that jurors are the heroes of our judicial system. Well, the 12 of you are our heroes in this case. You might remember that there was a question on the questionnaire that asked whether you wanted to be on this jury. You were to check yes, no, or maybe. A number of you checked no or not sure, and a few of you checked all three. But when I asked each of you if you would be willing to serve if the party selected you as a juror, you all said yes. You said yes even though we are in a pandemic with Omicron spreading in our community. You said yes even though you had concerns about serving given the nature of the case. You said yes even though you knew you would be sequestered during deliberations and away from your loved ones. And you said yes, even though there was a chance that this case could have lasted past Christmas. You were willing to sacrifice much because you believed in our justice system. And then you went into deliberations, and each of you brought with you your common sense, individual perceptions, and life experiences, and you came to an agreement on the verdicts. You did your duty. I'm so proud of you. You should be proud of yourselves. Without civic-minded citizens like you, our system of justice could not function. Thank you for your service. Thank you for your sacrifices. I wish you all a wonderful holiday season, and may the peace and beauty of the season be yours throughout the year. At this time, I'd like you to go into your waiting courtroom, and I'll be in just a moment. I'd like to thank you personally and to answer any questions that you have. Okay? Okay, please be seated. All right. Counsel, we have to pick a date tentatively for sentencing. For in custody, we'll be taking Ms. Potter into custody and holding without bail. So what is 3 weeks out? I think we probably want to do a tier 4.
So we will be looking at January 13th or 14th. We can do 11:30 on either day.
For sentencing?
For sentencing.
You want a pre-sentence report?
Yes, I'm having a PSI report done.
We are not available on the 13th. I believe we could do the 14th.
I'm in trial the week after that, and it does seem to be a little accelerated given the seriousness of the decisions you're about to make. So later in January would be our preference. We also would like to talk about the bail issue with you before you decide it, before you make a decision to take her in.
All right, I'll hear you out.
Go ahead, Mel. Well,
You know, I think it'd be easier for the court reporter if you went to the podium.
we both say a little bit, Judge.
Yes.
Well, there hasn't been a motion. I anticipate they would file a motion, but this arguendo, they're going to file a motion to revoke her bail. We will be filing a motion for a dispositional departure on the case. She is amenable to probation. Her remorse and regret for the incident is overwhelming. She's not a danger to the public whatsoever. She has made all her court appearances, including all appearances in the court. It is the Christmas holiday season. She's a devoted Catholic, no less. And there is no point to incarcerate her at this point in time because, A, you haven't decided what the sentence is going to be. B, the dispositional departure arguments are quite strong on this case. And C, it's not necessary for the preservation of public safety. So for those reasons, she need not be incarcerated whatsoever pending sentencing. You certainly can do it after sentencing, but this is a rather unique case of someone who has law enforcement experience and was never in trouble all her life and is 49, which is beyond the age of most defendants that you see. Plus, she has deep roots in the community and her family's here, and there's no evidence that she would flee. So we respectfully ask you to change your mind as to whether she needs to be incarcerated right now. I know Mr. Gray has a couple comments too.
Your Honor, her bail right now is $100,000. She's got that posted. She's not going to run. She obviously is not going to commit any more crimes. She's been convicted of an accident. She's been convicted of being reckless. I just would like to be able to, with Paul, file a motion for dispositional departure in this case. I think there's other facts that didn't come to light during the trial that are important also about Kim Potter and about this case. So I respectfully request that you release her on her $100,000 bail, and that'll make it easier to do the pre-sentence report. We'll get people sending letters on her behalf. And I would ask for a sentencing sometime if you release her, sometime. I start a trial January 20th. It should be over by February 20th, I hope, sometime in late February. And ask that my gosh, she's got $100,000 bail.
Breaking news now. Former Minnesota police officer Kim Potter found guilty of first and second degree manslaughter in the death of Daunte Wright. The judge said Potter will be taken into custody, holding her without bail. And you just heard from the defense there trying to make a plea to not hold her without bail. We were waiting to hear a sentencing date as well. Let's get right to national correspondent John Moan, who has been following this trial closely. John, just first, your reaction to this verdict.
Well, I think the fact that the jury, they deliberated for so long, I think the speculation was that she could be acquitted, but indeed no. She's found guilty in both counts of manslaughter, and the state has said that it would ask for the full sentence, up to 7 years. It may actually ask the judge to depart from those guidelines and impose an even stricter sentence. As you heard there, her counsel, Earl Gray, asking for leniency from the court and pleading for Ms. Potter to be out of custody, out of incarceration through the holidays when her sentence is, until her sentence is imposed, indicating her Catholic faith, that she wished to be at home at the holidays with her family. When I think you probably saw when the judge offered the jurors a holiday blessing and thanked them for their service as jurors, Kim Potter gave herself the sign of the cross. Again, her counsel pleading to the court that Potter ought to be out free until her sentencing.
What type of punishment could she be looking at here?
Again, up to 7 years, and prosecutors have indicated that they would ask the judge to depart from the guidelines and impose an even stiffer sentence of more time. And
John, you've been following this case very closely in the death of Daunte Wright. What stood out to you as we compare it to other high-profile killings of minority men and women at the hands of police officers?
Well, I think the timing of this, is the first part. This shooting and the killing of Daunte Wright took place as the trial of Derek Chauvin was taking place. You may recall Derek Chauvin is a Minneapolis police officer convicted of kneeling on George Floyd's neck, killing him. He was convicted earlier this year, and the shooting of Daunte Wright happened as that trial was taking place. The emotions and the backdrop of Minneapolis-St. Paul was very tense at the time. So this particular shooting that Ms. Potter was involved in and has been found culpable and guilty of happened as that trial was taking place. And there were protests and there was some unrest in Brooklyn Center because of what transpired on April 11th.
Yeah, it's amazing the comparisons between these two trials. National correspondent John Moan, thank you. Let's bring in trial attorney Ann Bremner joining us now. And thank you again, as always, for your time helping us unpack these very major cases with so many eyeballs leaning in with interest on the outcome here. Are you surprised at all with the guilty verdict?
No. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised, though, with any verdict in this case. You know, I've defended police officers for a pretty long time. I don't want to say how many decades, but it's been a long time. And then things have really shifted in the last few years. These cases become more predictably guilty verdicts and criminal charging decisions. And charging officers with crimes where that really didn't happen very much, in the more recent past. The only thing that surprises me is that it was first degree. I thought second degree was more likely, given the facts of this case, that maybe it wasn't reckless, it was negligent, just a little bit of a lesser kind of mens rea or culpability standard criminally. And the other thing that surprised me is that the judge immediately remanded her to custody. I kind of went, wow, I mean, that's a tough judge. And she didn't ask for argument. She asked for it after her decision. But that did surprise me to have her remanded at Christmas with a case that was, watched around the world, by some considered to be controversial, and of course where there was some sympathy toward this particular defendant, at least by some, but not this jury.
What do you make of Kim Potter's defense? She clearly was contrite in what she had done. She at one point said that she was so sorry for what happened. She says that she mistook her taser for an actual gun, or she used a gun when she meant to use the taser, and that seemed central to the defense. What do you make of how the defense framed the argument there?
I thought her lawyer did a good job. I mean, he was very practiced in the art of police defense. And again, I've been a police officer for a long time. There's a certain language you have to know about the policies, procedures, the laws, and what officers go through. You don't judge their use of force by 20/20 hindsight or armchair quarterbacking. And they have split-second decisions they make. Our U.S. Supreme Court has said that in a case called Graham versus Connor. But that having been said, I don't know that she should have testified. It seemed that she lost some sympathy there. And the fact is, it never made sense to a lot of people, and I'm sure including to this jury, how she confused a taser, so different from a gun, with these lethal consequences. I didn't see a real explanation for that in the defense. And I think that was very significant. And mistake, that's not a defense. It's not part of the defense of these cases. And I think by using that as a quote-unquote defense, it wasn't helpful with this jury.
This trial has had comparisons to the George Floyd case. In fact, both trials were held in the same Hennepin County courtroom in Minneapolis, and they involved a white officer killing a black man for an alleged offense. What comparisons do you see? Can we glean anything from looking at these two cases together?
Yeah, I mean, it's a tale of two cases with very similar results, convictions all the way around, with very careful deliberations by jurors. I mean, Abraham Lincoln said the highest calling of citizenship is jury duty. And the judge basically said that to these jurors. They took this very seriously in both cases. And these were high-pressure cases, pressure from both sides. And they reached similar conclusions. Same courthouse, same prosecutors even, in the Chauvin case and also in the Kim Potter case. So I look at these and I think these were very well tried. And I used to have a law partner that said any case well prepared and well tried can be won. I don't know if I believe that anymore. And you look at a case like this, I don't know what the defense could have done on these facts to secure an acquittal for Kim Potter.
And convictions of this nature are rare for officers. They were whenever Chauvin was. The same goes for Potter. Is this kind of, do you notice a trend happening right now?
Absolutely. I'm defending a police officer in a manslaughter case out here in Washington State now. I've defended officers, like I said, for a long time. I've never defended an officer in a manslaughter case. And he's absolutely not guilty in my case. I do see a trend. I think that for many years, when I picked juries, I would say, who wants to be a police officer? Whoever thought they wanted to be a police officer, no one would raise their hand. And then I ask, why not? And they say, it's a tough job. We believe in them. They keep us safe. They're not doormats. I don't want to do that job. They were supportive of the police. And I think those days are very different today, as we're seeing with these particular verdicts and charging decisions, around the country.
We just saw the judge decide to hold her, Potter that is, without bail, and the defense took issue with that. Was this the right move? What's your view on this?
Like I said, I was surprised because you usually don't see that unless it's a sex offense case, where there's statutes that say basically take someone into custody immediately so they can't endanger anybody else. And that's a given under the law. I was surprised in this case, especially when there was no motion from the prosecution to revoke her bail, and no one was really prepared to address it. The judge, she quietly, and very quiet and dignified, excellent judge, he just quietly said it, and then she heard argument on it. But she's not going to change her mind. And I think, this is a case where there could be significant prison time. Significant prison time. And bail is an act of grace. It basically says there's grace given to you as you get towards your trial because of your presumption of innocence. But once you're found guilty, that presumption no longer applies. Therefore, you can be remanded, your bail can be revoked, and you can stay in custody until you're sentenced. Not at sentencing like her lawyer said, but until you're sentenced. That was an act of grace, but it's gone.
Okay, trial attorney Ann Brimner, please do stand by. I want to get back to John Moan, who has been following the trial closely for us. John, are you still with us there?
Yep, right here.
John, I want to just catch our viewers up to speed. For anyone just joining us now, Kim Potter, the former Minnesota police officer, has been found guilty by a jury of first and second degree manslaughter in the death of Daunte Wright. This happened during the trial of Derek Chauvin, who is the officer convicted of murdering George Floyd last year. John, can you walk us through some of the more granular details of this case?
Yeah, so it all transpired from a traffic stop on April 11th, 2021, in which Mr. Wright was pulled over for having expired license tags. When police ran him through their database, they then say that he was wanted on a weapons warrant. From body cam footage later released after the shooting took place and after he was shot and killed, it then became clear that there was some kind of struggle, and that then Officer Kim Potter claimed she was drawing for her taser in a bid to restrain Mr. Wright. Instead, she drew her service weapon and then fired shots and killed him. After the shooting took place, you then see footage from various body cams of Officer Potter then expressing doubts about her conduct and remorse and looking despondent. From there, when this all happened, again, it's during the backdrop of the Chauvin trial. There were protests immediately, and the investigation went underway. And then shortly after, Officer Potter left the force and was charged with 2 counts of manslaughter.
Of course, there are comparisons to the trial of Derek Chauvin, the officer who killed George Floyd. One of the main differences that I've noticed is just between Chauvin and Potter during the trials themselves. We saw with Kim Potter, she became emotional on the stand. She apologized for what happened. We did not hear that from Derek Chauvin, who did issue condolences to the family, but he never did directly apologize and was accused of being cold-hearted. In this instance, we're seeing on our screen right now Kim Potter openly weeping during the trial proceedings, John.
Yeah, I mean, she offered remorse and regret, not just on that body cam footage, but when she took the stand in her own defense. Some may argue that perhaps hurt her own case, or that perhaps it humanized her. I think maybe the surprise for some is that because she offered that remorse, maybe the jurors would look into that and see that. But again, when the prosecution made its closing arguments, they said, look, she may feel regret and she may say that she committed a mistake, but this was, in their words, an epic blunder, a blunder of colossal proportions, and the mistake of her conduct cost a man his life.
We see that a lot with the kind of almost a controversy on whether to let the defendant testify on their own behalf. We've seen this in several other cases. Why is that becoming such an issue? How can prosecutors and the defense frame arguments around whether they testify or not?
I mean, this goes to a basic constitutional right. You have a constitutional right not to self-incriminate, not to testify, and it is not to be looked at, again, as an indication of guilt or innocence, whether you testify in your own defense or not. It's up to the state that brings charges against you to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that you are guilty of the charges and the allegations brought forth against you. So, again, a good defense attorney will say whether she testified in her own defense or not shouldn't be really an issue. It may add to her case whether her counsel believes that her taking the stand is beneficial or not. Either way, they're going to say whether she testified or not shouldn't be a factor, a determining factor, whether you view her guilty or innocent. Or not guilty, per se.
Right. John Moan, thank you so much. Please do stand by. Let's bring back in trial attorney Ann Brimner. We're going to do a little ping pong here. Bring back in the attorney. You've been very generous with your time, Ann. Thank you so much. Just before we hit the top of the hour here on Newsy Live, I just want to catch our viewers up to speed once again. For anyone not joining us, Kim Potter, the former Minnesota police officer, has been found guilty of first and second degree manslaughter. And Kim, Ann, you believe that the jury got it right in this case. Why do you think so?
Well, they followed the law. You know what's called jury nullification. That would have been probably a not guilty. Or a sympathy verdict, which they can't render. That would be a not guilty. Or saying it was a mistake and that's enough to acquit her. That would be a not guilty. But that's not what the law says, you know. And I'm a police lawyer, and so I have a lot of sympathy for her. But I think on the law, they did the right thing. And they carefully considered the law and the evidence and the way the instructions are written. They can't consider punishment. That's for the judge to decide. Minnesota has determinate sentencings, which are kind of grids, looking at your criminal history and looking at the current offense to decide what the sentence should be. And their lawyer's going to ask for some leniency, mitigating factors under the statute, he's already mentioned, you know, et cetera. There'll be a pre-sentence report. But sympathy, prejudice can't come into jury deliberations. They use their common sense. They are instructed to follow the law. They're presumed to follow the law. And I think that's what they did. That's how they reached these verdicts.
And it's an important distinction to say that it was not a murder charge that she was found guilty. It was a manslaughter charge. Can you just kind of explain the differences there for our viewers?
Sure. There's two kinds of manslaughter, at least in Minnesota. Manslaughter in the first degree is recklessness. You cause someone's death by acting in a reckless manner. And so that basically means you knew there was a risk that someone could die, but you did the bad thing anyway. You did the act anyway. That's manslaughter 1 in the first degree. Manslaughter 2 in the second degree is negligence. Basically means you have a duty to act carefully, but you weren't careful. You basically disregarded your duty to act in a safe and careful manner, and therefore you caused someone's death. If you'd been careful, that person wouldn't have died. So the jurors found recklessness and negligence. When you get to murder, you have things like intent, premeditation, malice, those kind of higher mental states, or mens reas they're called in the law. But that's not what this was. Manslaughter, recklessness, and negligence, not intentional.
And again, Kim Potter is going to be taken into custody following the guilty verdict. She was found guilty by a jury of first, second, and second degree murder in the very courtroom where Derek Chauvin faced his fate in the murder of George Floyd. And final thoughts from you on this case, telling us if there's a trend involved, broader implications for how cases involving an officer and the killing of black men and women.
Well, yeah, I've always said I'm on the side of the cop because I've been a police lawyer for a long time. And that's just something that I feel like that they're not adequately represented oftentimes in this country in courtrooms. There's great lawyers out there, but I think officers need what the private sector has, you know, in their public sector jobs. That having been said, and basically my plug for police officers, because I really believe in them. My grandpa was a police officer out here in Seattle. But I think that there is a trend, and the trend is clearly on accountability of police officers, and that's a good thing. They should be accountable. We want the great ones. We want the good ones. We want the ones that adhere to their duty. So that kind of a trend, I think, is something that's laudable, and it's clearly happening right now.
And we clearly do see all of these high-profile cases getting so much attention. I know we talked to you with the trial of involving the 3 men that were convicted in the killing of Ahmaud Arbery. There was also of course, George Floyd's death, and it just seems like these cases, for justifiable reasons, have been brought into the national spotlight as we begin this kind of almost a reckoning over race relations in the country. Ann Brimner, thank you so much for your time and your insight. We do appreciate it so much. Again, Kim Potter found guilty of a jury, found guilty of first and second degree manslaughter in the death of Daunte Wright. We will continue to follow this verdict and bring you any information we get, as well as top stories throughout the day on Newsy Reports at 4 p.m. Eastern. Thanks for joining us this afternoon. I'm Jay Struberg. Newsy Docs Presents is next.